You're listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, no, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today I'm here with Tamara Jefferies. Tamara Jefferies has an MA and is a holistic counselor, transformational coach. She has worked in wellness since 2005, counseling women, leading support groups for survivors of sexual assault, and creating empowerment workshops. She holds a master's in somatic psychology from John F. Kennedy University, several certifications and specializations of trauma and resolution, and is a certified life coach and yoga teacher, all of which has combined to create a multi-tiered approach to healing that honors the mind, body, and spirit. And by the way, Tamara, that is one of the things I love about you, is that you literally understand it's more than one thing, right? It's a group of things that we need to work on. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I am too. So one of the things we do here is we share our stories of hope, and I know you have a really powerful one. So do you want to get started by sharing your story of hope with all of us?
Of course, sure. So my story, I would say my journey, began on my 27th birthday. I had a dinner party with 9 of my closest girlfriends. And, you know, when I was driving home that night, it occurred to me that 4 out of the 10 women there were survivors of sexual trauma, either childhood sexual abuse or sexual assault. And I was among that number. And, you know, it just broke my heart, and it outraged me. And I just felt like, this cannot stand. I can't abide this. There has to be something I can do. And, you know, I'm just one woman, so I can't conquer sexual violence in the world, but I can do something to help women heal. And so I just made up my mind that night that I was going to do whatever I could to help as many women as I can heal from sexual trauma. And so, I just made the decision, like, I'm going to become a one-stop shop for healing. And I put myself on this journey, and I moved from Los Angeles up to the San Francisco Bay Area. And I started working at this rape crisis center as a counselor, and then as a support group facilitator. And once that started, it was just kind of like a journey into all these certifications and all this education. So I got certified as a massage therapist, as a yoga teacher. I got my master's in somatic psychology with a specialization in trauma, all of which to use for the women that I was helping. But what was so remarkable during that time was that I was learning and using all these tools to heal myself as well. And so when I came out of that in 2011, and, you know, throughout the course of that training, I was also studying with numerous and wonderful spiritual teachers. And so by the time I graduated, I had a pretty comprehensive toolkit for addressing trauma. And just since then, that's been my mission and my path, and I love it. And I love how bringing all of those different components together really caused the most comprehensive and just overwhelming transformation in women. And it just makes everything in my life worth it when I see that smile on a woman's face, and she's just like, oh, you know, I feel hope for the first time. I feel like I can do this for the first time. And it's wonderful. It's just the best thing in the world to me.
I want to talk a little bit too about, I know that men also suffer from trauma, but I know that most of the people who are listening to this show are women. So I really want to address women right now. And I want to talk about why women don't speak up more, and why there is so much shame by being treated badly. Like, you had no control over that situation at the time, and you have control over what's going on now. But why is there so much shame and such a stigma for women standing up and speaking their truth, or saying, like, I was traumatized, I was hurt, I was sexually abused, physically abused, mentally abused? Why do we not say anything?
Right. That's such an excellent question. And I think the root of it has to come from not believing the survivor. You know, there's so many stories of a girl going to her mother or going to someone in the church and confiding that something happened to them and they're not believed. And instead, they are shamed and told things like, well, why did you let that happen? And it's a terrible, terrible thing. Like you said, there's no, the victim of it has no control over this other person's action. So they definitely should not be blamed for it. But I feel like there's such a culture of blaming the victim that women just get shut down. And it's such a horribly, horribly invasive intrusion into one's life. And to have to talk about it is very painful. So to have gone through that pain of disclosing it to someone and then not have them believe you, it's just too much. And so I think that a lot of women just don't. They just don't. One, maybe out of embarrassment, but I think two is they probably did try to tell someone and they were shut down. And so there's just this culture of silence around it. And
When I was younger, I worked in the court system, and I think it's crazy that when somebody's being charged with physical or not mental abuse, but physical abuse against anybody, that person who's brought that charge against them is always victimized again.
yes.
Yeah, and it's terrible. And here's the thing, I get it. I worked in the courthouse for a long time, and I get that some people aren't forthright and they use it to, manipulate a situation, and it's not
Right.
accurate. And I'm just telling anyone who does that right now, you are victimizing every single man, woman, and child that has gone through this again, because their voice is not heard when they do come forward. So just try to keep that in mind, that what you're doing for the moment is putting that ripple effect that's affecting so many people, and not in a really supportive, good way.
No, it's so true. It's just like there are so few cases that are fabrications versus those that are valid. And those cases that are fabrications, it hurts everyone. It just hurts everyone. So I really wish that people would think before they speak and not do things like that.
So for women who maybe right now are listening to this, or they know someone who said something to them and they're like, that can't be, I don't believe that, right? What are some of the things that we can tell them? So if I'm a victim and I've told somebody and they didn't believe me, does that mean I stop telling people? Does that mean like I just take it on the chin? Like, okay, maybe they're right. If I don't say anything, it'll just go away.
Right. No, no. I mean, when we're faced with someone not believing us, all that means is that person is not safe for us to be sharing our innermost feelings and thoughts. And we have to find someone who is. And, it could be a friend, it could be a relative, it could be someone in your church, or a therapist or counselor. But the point is not to stop talking. Like, don't stop talking. Like, that's the problem. So we want to keep telling the story. We just have to find trustworthy people who can hear our story and hold it with respect.
I do know that, and this is a really selfish point of view of mine, but I feel like for women who are afraid to speak out, when you're afraid to speak out, you aren't stopping that cycle of abuse that they're going to go out and do again and again and again. And maybe no one believed you the first time, but then if another woman speaks out, or another child speaks out, or just another person, pretty soon it's like, well, wait a minute, why are all these people saying that? And I see these cases all the time where recently on the news, where women are coming out of the woodwork 20, 30 years later because they weren't strong enough to speak out then. But I look at all the victims after them that come forward, and could that have been stopped? I don't know, because would they be unlistened to? You don't know. But I
Right.
just kind of wonder what you would say to them.
What I would say to who?
To the women who are afraid to stand out, and like what that looks like, because you're not stopping it. You're not, even if it doesn't stop it and no one believes you, I promise you it's probably put the fear in them to slow them down.
Right. Yeah, for women who are afraid to speak, again, it comes down to finding someone you can trust to speak. And we have gone through the Me Too movement, and it brought so many voices out of the darkness, which was so needed. And, for those women who were silent for 20, 30 years, I understand that because the culture didn't embrace it. The culture didn't support them. You know, it was a time where that was just done and people just lived with it. And thankfully, we're in a time period now where people are like, no, that's not acceptable and you don't have to live with it. And so I think there's more support now because of the Me Too movement. And if you are feeling afraid to talk, again, just find someone that you feel is trustworthy and that can be respectful and hold that with you and help you get resources to move through it.
So let's talk a little bit about what holding on to that trauma does to a person. So even if you talk about it and you didn't get resolution, or you didn't work on releasing yourself from any liability of what went on, you know, and figuring out what that looks like for your body and your life moving forward, you're probably still dealing with that trauma. You're probably still holding it in your body. So what does that look like for people when they don't release it?
Right. Yeah, it can look many different ways. For some, it can be this pattern of tension. You know, for a lot of women who were sexually violated, the whole pelvic region becomes inflamed and can be very, very tense. And there can be any number of sexual dysfunctions, but it can also just be this kind of heaviness in the body that they just can't shake. And some women, as a coping as a way of coping, will turn to food, and they'll find that their bodies will accumulate fat in that area. You know, it's just like this ring that's kind of like this protective layer that's covering where this trauma happened. So there could be many manifestations. We can see it in the way the body moves, like as a woman's walking down the street, if there's like a lot of tension in the back, in the pelvic area, there'll be a stiffness, you know, there'll be a stiffness and a lack of fluidity in the movement of the body. Someone who's holding on to trauma generally has really tense muscles, and it can feel like just a vice in certain parts of the body. So it really does have a huge somatic piece when we don't deal with the psychological ramifications of it.
So I know it affects us physically, but what I've noticed most, and I just want to make this disclaimer for anyone who goes to speak to someone about this, I'm a mindset coach. I am not the coach that you want to talk to. Mindset is completely different than dealing with a past trauma. That is very deeply embedded. And I'm not saying a mindset coach isn't someone you could talk to for other things, but you need to work with a professional in this area because you could do more harm to yourself. Thinking, why can't I do this? I keep failing, because we're not equipped to deal with that. And so I want to make sure, like I would refer people to Tamara, because I know when they come to me that is something I cannot specifically work with. But mostly what I'm finding is women cannot be in a good, healthy relationship after having some sort of trauma done to them. They hold on to it and they think they're deserving. If their husband isn't screaming at them or pushing them or being forceful and getting their way for something, they think they're doing something wrong. And they don't feel worthy of healthy love from somebody. And they destroy great relationships or attract the wrong kind of relationships.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's depending, especially if you went through something very young, it sets into motion this pattern of magnetizing abusers. And so we move from one bad relationship into the next. And you're right in saying that a woman will learn or get the feeling like she doesn't deserve love, like she doesn't deserve happiness, or she's unlovable. A lot of women feel forever tainted by this, and that taint just weighs on them. It's remarkable though, once a woman starts the healing process, what happens for her and her relationship if she's in one, but also what happens for her in terms of she will stop magnetizing those abusers, and she'll start noticing the signs before she gets into anything like that again. But something that was really lovely that one of my clients recently shared with me was that she said, now that I'm healing, I'm noticing that he's healing, referring to her husband. It's like he's healing and their marriage is healing. And it's a wonderful thing. Like that ripple effect really does flow out once the healing process is underway. And it's gorgeous.
I agree. I remember one lady who came to me and I referred her out, but my only expression to her was, you must be exhausted. Like, how exhausting is it to carry that hurt for so many years? Your body must be exhausted. Your spirit is exhausted. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could let it go? And when I say let it go, I know we're not going to let it go, right? But there's
Right.
a way to let our bodies heal from that and move forward, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad that you said that, because that was actually a video I made not too long ago talking about that very thing of just how much survivors are holding in terms of just the psychic heaviness of it and the emotional heaviness of it, especially now that we're in this pandemic and dealing with just so much. It's just like, yeah, these women are exhausted. I mean, the men too, who are dealing with this. As you know, my clients are women, but so they're exhausted on so many levels from holding this and dealing with it, and especially if they haven't been working with it. So it's just kind of becoming heavier and heavier and heavier and drawing even more energy from them. So yeah, it's not something that we move, it's something we work through. And when we work through it, then it just opens up so much space in us, and that aliveness can start flowing back in us, which is just a really wonderful experience.
So for women who maybe are in crisis right now, it doesn't matter what age you are, except for, I get it. I feel the sorriest for children because they really do have no control. They have to depend on an adult to believe their story and remove them from that situation and protect them. So for the adult people who are out there, who are in crisis, what are some of the steps they can take? If maybe it's sad, but I've seen women beaten badly and keep going back and going back. And I know mentally they're not ready to leave. I don't know what holds them, honestly, because it's never been in my personality, but my heart goes out to them because they don't feel like they can survive on their own, or that they will be okay, or they feel safer in an abusive relationship. What would you say are some of the steps they can take to start making that healthier mindset and start moving away from the negative, unhealthy situation they're in?
Right. It can be really difficult, especially if a woman is in a situation where she's financially vulnerable. And if she has children, it complicates things incredibly. But for a woman who is in crisis, I would encourage her to look at what resources are there in her community, because there are shelters, there are hotlines. And that's usually the first place to start, is how do you get someone, if it's just on a hotline, just someone who can be there and be an ear for you when you're going through something. And then the next step is, can you be removed from that house? Is there someone you can go stay with, or, a family member optimally, but if not, then to some kind of shelter. It's the psychology of a woman who is stuck in an abusive relationship is so difficult, because there is something in her that believes she deserves it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something in her that is so frightened of the unknown, right? It's like, this is the devil I know. If I leave this house, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my kids? And she weighs all these things. And sometimes she picks the abuse over the unknown because she's just so scared of what could happen. And that's real. Like, we don't know what's going to happen when you walk out that door. But I feel like when a woman removes herself from that terrible situation, at least she has peace of mind enough to start to take in some new ideas. It's like new possibilities can start to kind of just drip down until she has that awakening of like, oh, I can do this. And there are services and resources out there for me, and I will be okay. So it's a process, but and it's not an easy one.
It is not. As a matter of fact, you just reminded me, we had a friend a year ago who took her own life because she thought that taking her own life would be easier than asking for help, which was so sad. Like, her ending it all was easier than saying, I'm being abused by someone I love. They're treating me like worse than an animal. And for her to like live up to that shame, it was easier for her to just quit. And that to me is the scariest thing, because I know what's on the other side for you. Once you get out and you start freeing yourself from that, I know. And by the way, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's not my field of expertise, but that is what an abuser's massive MO is. Make sure they're controlling you financially. They start isolating you from friends and family.
Yes.
Like they know what you're doing every minute. Then they start pulling you down. You're ugly, you're stupid, you're fat, you can't do anything right. And pretty soon our minds are like, I can't function. I can never survive on my own. And then they give you that little bit of love, right? After they abuse you terribly, it's,
Right.
I'm so sorry, please, I'll never do it again. I love you so much. That is not love.
No, it's not. It's manipulation. It's manipulation, and it's horrible. But you described it beautifully. Like that is the cycle of it. And that little bit of love, that window of tenderness is enough to draw a woman back and to think, well, maybe this time it'll be different. And it just starts all over again.
And protecting them. Once it does get out, they become their biggest protector.
Yeah.
So that really scares me. Like, that's sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my heart goes out to them, because that's what they feel is their safe space. And it's the most unsafe space in the world for them.
It is. It is. You know, it's not just trauma that we become addicted to. Like we can become addicted to anger. We can become addicted to depression. These things, they're just like becoming, it's like a groove in your brain, right? That just like, that's the record that's been on repeat, and that's what we know. And so it's so hard to just, I mean, you're a mindset coach, so you know what it is to like get from one place to another in the mind. Sometimes it feels like a Herculean effort just to make that jump. But if you make that jump, then it's amazing. But getting out of that groove can take a lot of effort, just a lot of effort.
And then for the women who have maybe been out of the situation for, maybe it happened when they were a child and they still carry, you, by the way, you carry this in your muscle, in your heart, in your soul. You carry stuff in your body until you recognize it and let it kind of go. And it affects your health. It really affects every part of your beautiful journey in this life. So for those women who maybe were abused as a child and they're in a safe space now and they're going through life, but just things just aren't flowing. They're not really thriving in that life. What would you say to those women?
Right. Well, that's my population. It's like those women who have come to a place where they just feel stuck and they're like, what is going on? Like, I can't move forward and I can't figure out why, and I'm not happy. My relationship isn't working. Nothing seems to be right. Like, what is it? And they come to me really frustrated, and it's like, all right, let's try to unpack this. And this is where I just start pulling in all the tools, and it's like, there's a component of this that's deep in your body. There's also a component of this that's deep in your psyche, and we're going to work with both. And we work with the dreams, we work with their, as I said, we have these tension patterns, and we work with the nervous system. And we start to go into the story and just unpacking the story layer by layer. And what happens in that process of sharing and being reflected back and having your story held in a respectful way is that it slowly starts to become less painful. There is a distance that happens. And in that distance, I feel like that's where the healing comes in, as you start to separate what happened to you from who you are, you know, because you're not this story, you're not this trauma, you're not that wound. And I think that on a really deep level psychologically, we take it on and we identify as, this is me. Like, I am sullied somehow, I am tarnished, I am broken, and I can never be whole. But that's not true. And once we start moving through the story and learning some new skills for managing our anxiety and managing the feelings that come with the negative thoughts, there's so many negative thoughts that come with living with trauma. That negative self-talk is what I'm talking about. When we work with these things, then just this beautiful transformation begins to unfurl. And it just, once it starts and that container is held, it just flows in this really beautiful direction.
When we first started talking, I noticed that you said when you decided to move into this area of expertise that you said, I'm just one woman. How am I going to, is it just me, right? Well, I want to tell all the women that are listening out there, we are the most powerful thing on this planet. We give every single person that's been here came from a woman, right? Every
Right.
single person that
Right.
walks this earth. We populated this planet and we
True.
raised some incredibly bright, beautiful people. And if we can do that on our own, imagine what we can do when we start connecting with the right people to take us the rest of the journey. So I would encourage all of you like that if you're struggling or you just want a safe space, where are some of the places they can connect with you, Tamara?
Sure. My website is growandthrivewellness.com, or you can email me directly at tamarajefferies.com. You can find me on Instagram at growandthrivewellness.com as well. Or I'm sorry, Grow and Thrive Wellness on Instagram.
And do you have like a Facebook group or something where people go and congregate and get to know each other and like become these powerful sisters?
I have that in the works. It's not up yet, but I'm creating a circle. It's called Sister Circles.
Oh.
And yeah, I know. I've been just brewing on this for a while now. So I'm hoping to have that up in the next month or so. So yeah, it'll be a great place to come together and heal together. And I'll be doing a group coaching and counseling in that circle.
Well, I'm so grateful that you came. And I feel like this is such an important message to get out into the world that people, I want you to know, man, woman, I really wish I could address children, but I know that it's a completely different ballgame because they don't really have the control that we have as adults. And I want you to have a beautiful 2021. I want you to take that step to treat yourself the way you deserve to be treated and get someone, like you said, a safe person to talk to that hears you and, you know, maybe helps you take that next step to get more help. But this was an incredible, incredible podcast and a really powerful one. Thank you so much, Tamara.
Thank you. Thank you. It was an honor. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.